a closer look at the inescapable math of climate change, debunking CBC's climate propaganda. Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society, and tonight I'd like to walk you through a recent CBC story, and we'll see just how much of it is in the public interest and how much of it is propaganda. So let's get started. This is part one of a three-part series. I just kept finding more and more material to talk about. So enjoy the first one, and hopefully you'll tune in for the other two as well. Now, CBC's had some challenges this past month when Elon Musk labeled them a government-funded media outlet. They objected and said that they're less than 70% government-funded. So he corrected the label to read that they're 69% government-funded, which everybody got quite a kick out of. But let's see what happens when you have government-funded media and government-funded consultants. The story that I'm concerned about here is the latest political skirmish over the carbon tax left out the most important facts. Really. And it says this is a closer look at the inescapable math of climate change. And notice here that we have some wind turbines and a rainbow suggesting that there's a good news or a pot of gold under that rainbow. And there probably is, but not for you. And it says here, new figures from the federal government point out a path to net zero emissions. Really? We'll find out. So CBC's propaganda says, put together, the National Inventory Report and the Social Cost of Carbon lay out the inescapable math of climate change. And they fill in some of the facts that have been missing from the latest skirmish in the interminable fight over carbon pricing in Canada. Note that the author of this story also wrote this book about the Prime Minister. Now, in the recent report of the GHG inventory, greenhouse gas inventory, which is what this story is about, Minister Guilbeault is quoted as saying that the bottom line is that Canada is bending the emission curve downward. Well, you can't really count lockdowns as downward, and this looks like it's going back upward to me. But let's continue. You see, these are past Canadian emissions and our future targets. It looks like it might be difficult to reach either of those, don't you think? And this is what the National GHG Inventory Report came up with. So 28% of our greenhouse gases are from oil and gas, 10% from agriculture, 22% from transportation, 11% from heavy industry, 7% from waste and others, 13% from buildings, and 7.7% from electricity. So the whole idea of decarbonization is that electricity will become the driver of industrial processes. It will take over transportation. You see, you've got this little plug-in car, and it will replace oil and gas. That's the theory, or most oil and gas. Let's see if that's true. Now, in the CBC report, it says, compared to 2005, Canada's total emissions have fallen by 62 megatons. But that national result obscures profound differences across 6 economic sectors. And then they say that emissions from electricity have fallen, significantly assisted by the phase-outs of coal-powered generation in Ontario and Alberta. Well, look what China puts out. This is China's consumption of coal. So Canada phased out coal to save the planet, but in fact, China just continued to use more coal. Thanks, Canada. More for me. And guess what? China also built a coal railway, which is equal to about a third of the distance across Canada. So this is the longest coal transporting railway line, 1,837 kilometers, carries 200 million tons of coal annually from North China's inner Mongolia to East China's Jiangxi. Yeah, So we really saved the planet, Canada, by shutting down coal in Ontario and Alberta. So this is from our report, Futile Folly, that was put together by Robert Lyman in 2019, and we reissued it in 2020. You see, China emits in 1 month what Canada emits in a year and a half. So CBC is saying in 2021, Canada's GHG emissions totaled 670 megatons. But in fact, China emits in 1 month 819 megatons. That was in 2019. So we're kind of on a losing battle there. And after the National Inventory Report, the Liberals also reviewed the social cost of carbon. So CBC says 6 days later, with even less fanfare, Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault announced that the government would update its estimate of the social cost of carbon, an internal calculation used for performing cost-benefit analysis of federal regulations. So the social cost of carbon is intended to demonstrate the damage from carbon dioxide emissions and global warming supposedly caused by those carbon dioxide emissions. So just remember what it said here, that this is a cost-benefit analysis. And remember that as we go through this presentation. So even though in November of 2022, the Parliamentary Budget Officer showed the economic damage of climate change to GDP will be negligible. So this is an excerpt from a report that we did. And Dr. Ross McKittrick calculated that the GDP might grow 388% over the next 80 years. But according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, if we do nothing, it would only grow 381%, which is a small driver compared to other drivers of the economy. Small difference. So, and that's even what the IPCC's fifth assessment report also concluded, that the economic impact of climate change is small compared to other drivers. And the Parliamentary Budget Officer even said that Canada's own emissions are not large enough to materially impact climate change. But here's what happened. CBC says that the social cost of carbon was calculated now and increased by the federal government, that the social cost is $261 per ton. And CBC said that's notably higher. Notably higher. Yes, it is notably higher. It's 4 times higher. That's inescapable math. 4 times higher. Now, here's a map of explicit carbon prices from around the world in 2021. This is in US dollars, but you can see that some of the highest prices are like Sweden, 142, Switzerland, 106, Liechtenstein, 106 dollars per ton. But you can see like the US has no carbon tax, and most places have like maybe $7, $5, $9, okay, $15 in Latvia, $89 in Finland, $4 in Singapore. What do we got over here? In South Korea, $19 a ton. Japan is $3. And China's ETS system is the top is 13 and the bottom is 3. So in what country would a high carbon tax be most damaging to the economy? Well, would it be Switzerland, which is 242 times smaller than Canada? Would it be Sweden, which is where Canada is 23 times as big as Sweden? Would it be Liechtenstein, where Canada is 62,404 times bigger than Liechtenstein? Where do you think a high carbon tax would be most damaging? Well, obviously it would be in a country that's very vast and cold and relies on transportation for everything. So Canada had the 5th highest carbon tax in the G20 in 2021, and it's higher now. And yet, in all this cost-benefit analysis, they never include the social benefits of hydrocarbons. And one benefit you can see here is increased lifespan, longevity. So you can see that right up until around the 1900s, people died when they were like 40. And then there's this dramatic rise as we started using coal, oil, and gas, and all the other things that we could do with those, like modern medicine. So the wonderful benefits of hydrocarbons are energy security, modern medicine, public sanitation, billions in revenues, which pays for hospitals, infrastructure, education, thousands of jobs, food security, and freedom of movement. And they don't calculate the cost of carbon taxes, which create heat or eat poverty, unemployment, social chaos, blackouts and shortages, public health breakdown, isolation, and despair. It's funny, it's almost like there's a global agenda to put a global price on carbon, because it looks like people are trying to establish a global carbon trading scheme in which they would be dealing with carbon markets which are based on the lack of delivery of an invisible substance to no one. So actually, there's no need to divide society with dangerous dreams of climate ideologues, because energy is life. And we should get together. We should get the engineering and the hard numbers people together with the ecologists, the environmentalists. We should recognize that our society only functions when we work together, and we should not let energy illiteracy and climate policies destroy Canada. These policies are creating the global energy crisis, famine, and widespread heat or eat poverty. Now, that wasn't in the CBC report, was it? So that's the first section of issues with that CBC report. So join me for part 2 and see what other faux pas they make and how bad they are at math. And I'm actually fairly enumerate myself, but even I could see all these problems a mile away. So if you'd like to help us, by the way, you can join us and become a member. You can donate online, or you can call the office, or you can just send us an e-transfer to contact@Friends of Science Society, and have a look at our website. We've got all kinds of climate and energy policy information there. So thanks very much for watching part 1, and I'll be back shortly with part 2.